Okay, let's go ahead and share with your partner, again, that attack the text process. South side, you are going to start. So, actually, no, south side just started. North side, you're going to start. North side, you give the first step. Then south side, you give the second step. Then back and forth until you're done with the steps, okay? And then we'll check what you guys came up with. If you don't have someone, you just work with a group around you. So, north side, you go first. Step 1. Ready? Go. Okay, with your partner too, just discuss as a group, why do we do the attack the text process? See if you can remember, why did I tell you we do the attack the text process? So with your group, discuss, or your partner, discuss why do we do the attack the text process? Go. Okay, eyes in the air, back is here. Alright, so let's see. Kelly, what is the first step of the attack the text process? Kelly in the back. Kelly Tran, sorry. Okay, before we can define the words that we don't know, what do we have to do? Before we can even read, help her out. Somebody help her out. What can we do? Yeah.
I said the first step of the text process is to examine the author and title.
Yeah, so we're examining the text. So Kelly, what's the first step we're going to do? Examine the text. Very good, okay? So the first step we're going to do is examine the text. Why? Does anybody remember why we're examining the text? We're looking at the author, things that might be bolded, or pictures that might be with it. Yeah. So, yeah, and why do we want to have an idea of what we're going to read?
To see if we have knowledge from before.
Yeah, to see if we have some prior knowledge, because remember, our brains are like little mini computers, and if we already have folders to stick information in, it's going to be easier for us to remember that. And so we're trying to see if there's any prior knowledge that we might have. Good. Okay, so we're skimming the text, we're trying to see what this might be about, why are we reading it, okay, getting an idea from it just by looking at it. What else is part of step 1? Autumn, what's another part of step 1?
To chunk the text.
Good, so we want to make sure that we chunk the text. Why do we chunk the text? Do you guys remember from that?
To break it down.
To break it down, good. Why do we want to break it down? No.
You can take more information in smaller sections.
Perfect. You're going to take in more information in those smaller sections when you break it down and have it in chunks, right? Because we remember we had talked about you go home, you do your science homework, you read everything, and then you don't remember anything you read because you're not actively engaging in the text, right? Or you're reading too big of chunks. So we break it down. So that's step 1. We look at the text, we just kind of skim it to get an idea of what it might be about, and then we chunk it, okay? After we do those 2 steps, then what do we actually do? Hannah, what do we actually do?
We read it and then summarize it.
Perfect. We read it and then we write our about statements on the left-hand side, okay? And remember, about statements are just our summary statements. So we know what that chunk is about. We're processing that chunk as we go. Good. Okay? So after we read it once and we write our about statements, what do we do next? Jaden, what do we do next?
Me?
Yep,
Did
you. Yep.
After we write our about statements, we read over the text again and make sure we didn't miss anything.
Okay, good. We read over the text again, and we're making sure we didn't miss anything. But what else? Oh, let me back up. So we read it the first time, and as we're reading it the first time, what's some things that we need to do, Autumn?
Circle vocab.
Yeah, circling vocab we might not understand, so that we can define it, or if there's something that's confusing in it, we're going to question it. We're going to put a little question mark next to it, so we can go back to it. Okay. Then we're going to read it again, like Jaden said, and we're trying to make sure we clarify anything we might have. What else are we doing in the right-hand margin? Yeah.
Making reflections.
Yeah, and what are our reflections? What are some examples of reflections that we might have? Go ahead, yeah.
Vocabulary words that you don't understand.
Okay, so we might define our vocabulary words that we didn't know. What else?
Like inferences and questions.
Okay, we're making inferences, we're making questions, we're making predictions, we're connecting to the text, forming opinions. We're, whatever we need to do to connect to the text and understand it better, we're doing in the right-hand margin, okay? Sometimes we'll have you read it a third time, right? And this one, I'm just going to give you because we didn't go over this one as much. And in that third one, a lot of times I have you do this in the second step, but in the third step, you're reading it again or you're skimming it again. Remember, you may not have to reread the whole thing. It may just be parts that you're rereading. But you're rereading it again, and you're looking for your literary devices or your fallacies, or if you're in science class, you're looking for scientific method, whatever your science teacher told you to look for, right? Or if you're in social studies class, you're looking for historical components, whatever your teacher tells you to do, okay? Why do we do attack the text? What did you guys come up with? Robert, why do we do attack the text?
To help retain the information.
Okay, so we're helping retain the information. How? How are we helping to retain the information?
Like giving me like what analysis and like that information in detail.
Okay, so we're really looking at the details. We're interacting with the text, right? We're not just reading it to read it like we would for pleasure. We're reading it to learn, okay? And that's a little bit different of a reading style. Remember, this is what good readers do, is they attack the text, and they do it mentally. We're practicing it, like writing it out, just so that we get used to it. But that's what good readers do, okay? Is they interact with the text. They're writing about the text. They're writing on the text. They're asking questions about the text. They're doing their summaries in their heads as they're reading. All these things is what good readers do, okay? All right, with your partner, go ahead and check where they have their complex sentence. Make sure that their complex sentence is correct in their piece. Point it out to them so they can check it. See if it has a dependent clause and an independent clause. Make sure that it has the correct comma. Remember, if it's dependent clause, comma, IC. Okay, so you can, once you have your partner checked out and we're all good, go ahead and put that off to the side, and you're going to open on Classroom. There is it says Poem for TKAM. So open under Classwork, under TKAM, so To Kill a Mockingbird, TKAM. Okay, there is a place where you will open up the attack the text, and it's going to be first it's going to be the normal attack the text, but now I want you to scroll down to attack the poetry text, because today we're doing poetry. And whenever I say we're doing poetry, kids are always like, ah, right? But you actually love poetry, most of you. What is something that you listen to every day that's poetry? Yeah, music. You guys always have your headphones in, you're always listening to your music. Music is essentially poetry put to beat, right? So what you don't like is a lot of times to analyze poetry, but it can be fun, and I think you'll like the poem that we're going to talk about today. Okay? So we're going to give you throughout the course of the year 2 different kinds of ways to help you read poetry. The first one is the attack the text, which we're going to do today. That's a little simplified version. If you're not really having to write a lot about poetry, maybe you're just answering some questions, some AZ Merit-like questions on poetry, the attack the text will usually suffice, okay? You'll be able to answer, or if the poem's maybe not as difficult as some other poems, then you can do the attack the text. Attack the text. The other one that I'll show you is called Types Fast, and that's a little bit more elaborate. That's what you want to use when you're like AP writing, you know, timed writing, and you have to analyze a poem, and you're going to have to write a little bit more deeper about it. So we're giving you 2 different forms. We're going to start with the easier one, the attack the poetry text, because for our basis today, we just need to practice. We're going to look at some AZ Merit-like questions after the fact, and we're going to connect it to our text that we've been reading. So we don't need to get really in-depth with it, so that's why we're using the attack the text on this process. Okay, if you notice, it's similar, right? It looks like the other one. You're going to examine those text features. You're going to look at the author. You're going to see if there's any poems or any pictures. You're going to look for any definitions they may give you, because poetry will do that sometimes. They'll give you footnotes with definitions. Okay, so you're looking for anything that gives you insight into the poem so that you can get that prior knowledge working. Then you are going to chunk it. A lot of times you chunk by stanzas. That's usually the easiest, but however you want to chunk it, remember chunking is very individualized. I will give you chunks when we're doing it together, but when you're doing it on your own, that's very individualized, okay? Reading, you're going to read it once through. As you're reading it, you're circling that vocab, and then we're going to do the about statements on the side, okay, on the left-hand margin. The little difference is where you have this second read. In the second read, in the reflections part, and I think actually on the one I gave you, it's down at the bottom, but you are going to do the who, what, where, when, and how of the poem, okay? So when we say who, that's probably the hardest for students, is who is the speaker. Notice it says speaker. Am I asking who the author is? No, okay? Author and speaker are not always the same, okay? The author is taking on a point of view. They are becoming someone else when they're writing, usually. And so that's what I want to know. Who is the person they're becoming, essentially? Who would be saying this poem or writing this poem? Not the author, but who are they while they're writing this poem? Does that make sense? So you want to look at the point of view of the author. Whatever your answer is then the speaker. So your author's name is not going to be the who. Okay? Occasionally the author writes an autobiographical poem, and then it would be the who, but that doesn't happen that often. Okay? So what is happening in the poem? What's the actions, the events, what's going on? Okay? So that's taking all your little summaries and kind of putting them into one big summary. Okay? That's the what. Where and when is the action taking place? The when can be morning, noon, night, or it can be an actual date. Okay? The where can be general or it can be specific. It just depends on the poem. And then how does the speaker feel about this? Always start, do they feel positive or negative? And then use words to describe it after that. So if I say they feel positive, then I'm going to use positive words to describe how they feel. If I say they feel negative about it, then I'm going to use negative words to describe how it feels. Okay? I'm going to show you this process. Oh, sorry. So then you read it again, and on the third read, that is when you're looking for your literary devices within a poem. A lot of times there's lots of them because it's poetry, okay? You're looking for the mood and the tone. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes, what mood and tone is. And then you're looking at that overall theme of the poem. What's the lesson the author's trying to teach you through the poem, okay? So I'm going to model this process for you using Strange Fruit. And then I'll tell you my thinking as I am modeling this process for you, why I'm writing the things I am. I'm going to tell you, walk you through that, and then you're going to practice it with another poem with your partners, okay? So there are 2 poems under the TKM poem part. We're going to pull up Strange Fruit first. So go ahead and pull up Strange Fruit. All right, so we're looking at Strange Fruit, and again, my first step is to just kind of skim it, get an idea, preview the text, right? Figure out what this text is about. So when I look at this, the first thing I think about is the title, Strange Fruit, okay? I think about fruit, I think about what do I know about fruit, okay? I know that fruit hangs on trees, There can be different kinds of fruit, right? But then they have this word strange. So maybe it's not a fruit that I may know, but I have this prior knowledge about fruit at least, right? Then I notice in this poem that they have words defined for me. So I want to read those words before I start reading my poem. They have poplar tree. It's a kind of tree known for its spiraling branches. So again, I just talked about fruit hangs on a tree. Now they're going to talk about a tree. Okay, I'm on the right track. Pastoral, pertaining to the tranquil or peaceful life of the country. So, okay, now I might have a setting if they're talking about country. Okay, now I can kind of picture that in my mind. Gallant means brave or polite to women especially. And then magnolias is a flower found especially in the South. So that gives me even more information that more than likely it's some kind of country feel in the South. We have trees, we have this strange fruit, okay? So I have all sorts of prior knowledge before I even began reading the poem, okay? So my next step is to actually, I have to come up with my chunks, right? So for this one, we're going to start here, strange fruit hanging from the popular trees. My second chunk is going to be after the sun and smell of burning flesh. And then this will be my third chunk, okay? So those are my chunks. I've previewed the text. Now I need to read it once through, okay?